What's on your evil mind? Hold your insulting tongue and mock my words well.
How about this rumor that you are really hired, Mr. Stark?
Hello, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Comic Book Chronicles. Yeah, we still need to work on that. That just sounds pitiful.
Oh, this is Roddykat.
I'm just saying, man, we can give some vitamins, bulk them up. We can rebuild it. That's all I can say. Anyway, I am your host, Roddykat, and you can find me at Roddykat on Twitter and Instagram, and you can also find me at Instagram at CBCaps. You can also find me at News Nerds Need on Twitter and News Nerds Need Reddit. See, that's what I'm talking about. Just like, with me tonight, the man with the sound effects, who's got some gremlins in his pocket right now, but it's great.
Exactly.
We're gonna get up. 1agent_70.
What's up, everybody?
And you can find him at agent_70 on Twitter Twitter and Instagram, and All Point Sports. Although that should be the name of your sports program, but I know it's not, so don't look for that one. Not with us tonight is PCN_Dirt, whom you can find at PCN_Dirt on Twitter, Pop Culture Net on Twitter, popculturenetwork.com, and all of his umbrella sites underneath that. And of course, the Osiris of this ish one, Tim DOGG98 on Twitter, CB Cron on Twitter, The Click Nation on Twitter. That's the KLIQNATION, and of course, theclicknations.com. But you can most definitely find him over at Comic Book Resources, writing his face off, and not writing Face Off, which is already a terrible movie and doesn't need a comic book adaptation. So don't do it. Yeah, I said it. Fight me. Anywho, you want a John Woo movie? Go into his older stuff. Maybe Mission Impossible 2, whatever. So tonight, I felt like I had some stuff to say before we started, but I don't think so. Except for we got a holiday weekend coming up at the time of recording. So happy early Labor Day.
Memorial Day,
excuse me. You know what? The reason why they got me screwed up is because somebody kept saying Labor Day, and I kept repeating. Correcting them.
Sure.
And now it just turned about. So yes, Memorial Day weekend. Some of y'all have 3-day weekends. Some of y'all are working like normal. Enjoy yourselves and be careful and be safe out there, regardless of what you get into. And remember, because that's the reason. Anywho, we're going to get into this week's comic books. And if anything else comes out to mind, then hey, I'll think about it then. Except for this tweet that I forgot to put out, like right there.
And there it goes.
So we will start off which we normally would have talked about before before the show, but we did not get a chance to. So we'll start with what you read. We might as well go ahead and get them out of the way and get to the War of the Realms books.
Alrighty. We could talk about Miles, because that's really the only book. Like, you read a lot of stuff this week.
Oh, you want to get to the war stuff last? Okay, that works for me. Yes, Miles Morales, Spider-Man, number 6. That works.
Sure. We were just talking about it, and it's also very fresh on my mind because I literally just read it.
True.
So this is issue number 6 of the of this volume of Miles Morales, and
it's pretty good.
We're introduced to, this is the full first appearance of one Starling, who is going to be playing a role in this book that is going to be very familiar to some readers of long-time Spider-Man stories, and
maybe even a little movie tie-in.
Sure. So just as a brief overview, Starling introduces herself as Miles is trying to crack down on some gang members who are working for one Tombstone. Tombstone is trying to muscle his way into Brooklyn, far away from his roots uptown. So as Miles is trying to take down, or at least investigate, Starling comes in and busts up the party. And, we have what starts out as the classic first
team up.
Right.
Oh,
first encounter between heroes.
Or sorta heroes. We still don't know the full extent
Right.
of things.
Well, ultimately,
more vigilante at this point, but yes.
Right. Well, ultimately, what I mean by that is it's let's argue with each other, fight each other, and then team up.
Yeah. And in also true Spidey's fashion, this also sets her up to be not necessarily a potential. Well, actually, I don't know. There is something that may have got sparked there, but will give you shades of one Felicia Hardy Black Cat.
Yeah, definitely.
In a sense, minus the the robbery. However, there is a Spider-Man, there is a Spider character and meets this other person who seems to have some interest, or potentially may have some interest, and they are doing something that the Spider person, is not really down with. However, again, there's a little spark of something possible, and it also comes at a time where our man Miles is having he's not having issues, but he's kind of going through a little something, specifically with a certain lady friend of his whom I happen to like. He's not having trust issues, but he's basically having an issue with his identity, and she seemed to know, which we have said before. She knows what's up, and she wants Miles to tell him, but he's not giving it up, which is causing a rift with their friendship or whatever their thing is, which again slightly mirrors, some early days of Peter's life to a sense. So, the spider apple doesn't necessarily fall that far from the literary tree.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, ultimately, we still have some aspects of this story that are very Miles. Yeah. They're original to Miles' story, but there's going to be some aspects to the story that parallel Peter Parker's story coming up, and
that doesn't necessarily say that it's going to play out the same.
No, it's they just mirror. So right. You're going to have characters filling some of those roles. What's funny is that I kind of forgot that, and there's a guest appearance at the end of the issue that I kind of forgot had some meaning still in this, because I forgot this character was still around.
Mm-hmm.
So it was interesting. I mean, obviously, we're only 6 issues into Saladin Ahmed's run on this book, and it's I think it's the character's first appearance in this volume. So that just leads to me kind of being, oh, I totally forgot this character was still around.
It happens. Marvel's been doing that. It's like, oh, guess what? Hey, we have this character that we're pulling out the pocket. So, because we have to use them and lose them. No, actually, that's probably not it, but could very well be. But yeah, that's pretty much the issue. It was a pretty good issue. Like I said, I dare say. Oh, and actually, speaking of that, and speaking of the character that comes in, at the end, that also could potentially be a mirror to another Spider adjacent movie of recent note.
Mm-hmm.
So, without giving it away too much, But and it goes so far is that if you go past that last page, there is a which I think I remember seeing this cover. There's a cover for the next issue. That makes it a little bit more apparent because it is from the said movie. If I'm not, I've seen that same poster or that same picture in the said movie. So interesting times ahead. But yeah, but like I said, the Miles' book was good this week. It was quite interesting.
How good was it?
Hey!
Ladies and gentlemen, a wild PC and underscore dirt has joined us.
Woo!
We'll get that fixed on these days.
Yeah, no, I felt bad. I was listening to the recording from last week, and you could barely hear any of the sounds that I was playing. Like we could all hear them, but apparently they didn't come through on the recording. So,
yeah, I was about to say, I'm like, Roddy, just check our volumes, our internal volumes in the chat room. But in any event, thanks for popping on, Dirt. Much appreciated.
Yep, just walked in the door from dinner. So, all right. Excuse me.
We've only talked about one book so far
this
week. We started late because we were catching up on our reading, so we could actually have some stuff. We could actually have some stuff to talk about in common because I only read the majority of the books that I read. The vast majority of the books that I read are War of the Realms related. So,
there were a lot of them.
Yeah.
And I kind of went from the other way from it, and then started reading the War of the Realm book. So I caught up. So he caught up on one, and I caught up on one, and he got up on one that wasn't, and I caught up on one that was.
Right. So
and I've only read 3 books, and none were from Marvel. So.
Oh, that's awesome.
That works.
Yeah,
that works. Although I know what I was gonna say is I recommended this particular War of the Realms book to Roddy, and he liked it. It was the Strike Force Jotunheim book.
Yeah, Land of the Giants.
Yeah, Land of the Giants. So you might even be able to enjoy it without knowing too much about what's going on in War of the Realms. Well, we'll get to that book when we talk about it. We won't spoil too much.
This is number 2.
1.
No, it's a one shot. It's one of the
it's a one shot. Oh,
yeah, it's one of those Strike Force. Yeah, it's those Strike Force one shots.
Yeah, it's basically within a type of situation.
Yeah, I have not read anything of War of the Realms, so I don't know a single thing about what's going on.
You hadn't read like first issue.
I didn't read any single thing.
Gotcha. So yeah,
it's good.
Well, let's put it this way. I can safely say that at least 2 books, if you've read issue 1, probably 2 books this week, we'll fall into that.
Well, I've not read 1, so.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm saying. You would at least have to read 1 to kind of get some of that out of the way. But anyway, let's get on to our next book before we get into that mess.
I mean, did you want to throw out a book, Dirt? Because like I said, the rest of my books are all War of the Realms.
Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah.
I can talk about Action Comics real quick.
Sure.
They've split basically with Bendis taking over the Superman books. You have Action Comics and Superman. So Superman has been more of the family book. It's the Lois and Clark and Jonathan story.
Right.
And then Action is more of what's happening in Metropolis. You've got the Daily Planet. You've got the battles, the big fights. You've got the Crimson Mist evil organization coming. You've got Leviathan. We got news a couple weeks ago, I guess, that they're calling the event just Event Leviathan coming to DC this summer. And so it turns out that the story in Action is actually leading directly into this event. So this issue is actually the last of the prologue leading into Event Leviathan. And so basically what has happened over the past few issues is Amanda Waller came to Superman, basically to Clark, said, yeah, I know your secret. There's something going on. We got to, take care of this, whatever, blah, blah, blah. They find out that Leviathan has somehow infiltrated everything. So all your groups like Argus, like the DEO, like Checkmate, any of those, secret government spy groups, Spiral, all these things in the DC universe that are those spy groups, they've all been infiltrated and they're all collapsing because of Leviathan.
Right.
And basically what has happened is the people who are in charge of these groups, they saw it was coming, and instead of gearing up and getting ready for a fight, they all went into hiding because it's that big of a problem. So what we find now in this particular issue is that Leviathan is making their big push. They're making their big push to destroy everything, to blow everybody up. But curiously, Superman realizes that in all these places where they've attacked, where they've destroyed these government buildings, where they've destroyed all these secret bunkers and whatever, there are no bodies. Something's going on. There's something weird about it, and they can't quite figure out what it is. And this issue does not answer the question. It just kind of goes along with them digging and trying to figure out. The weird thing, though, about this story is that in order to set it up, they talked about how Clark Kent and Lois Lane had these alter egos in the spy community. They were part of Spiral for a while when they did, undercover work, which they don't really explain. They don't go into. It's not a story that I don't think I ever read. So I'm pretty sure they just kind of...
Is that something they just threw it in?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they just kind of made it up and threw it in there to just say, at some point, this happened, because stuff happens all the time. And you just have to kind of go, okay, thanks, Bendis. I guess we'll just go with that. So, so yeah, it's kind of weird the way that they set it up, that he just kind of tossed some of this random stuff in there. And then it's a little disappointing that it's been building and building and building to now go into a miniseries separate from the book. Now, I'm sure there's going to be crossovers and whatever, but it's like it's building and building and building. Now go buy something else to continue the story. And that's something that I really hate when they do that type of thing. Like, it's one thing when you've got 6 or 7 different books, they all have different threads. Like Secret Wars had all the Fantastic Four stuff and the Avengers stuff, and all of that was kind of...
Water Realms is kind of like that,
Yeah, it's all woven together, and you need something to bring all these threads together, whereas this, maybe something from Silencer kind of ties into it a little bit, but I'm not sure how well that's going to go in. But this is leading directly into it, and I don't know, that may be it. Those may be the only books that are going into this. So it's just kind of disappointing that it's like, okay, well, now I got to go get something else in order to follow this story that's been building. But it's interesting. If nothing else, at least there's something kind of new in all of it that's going on. But yeah, still overall, it's kind of a letdown.
I was about to say, that's Bendis bringing the Marvel style over. They knew how to create those.
That's Bendis bringing the Bendis style over. Don't put that on.
But what I'm talking about is their version of event style storytelling. So not that DC's immune from it, but
they've done their own.
but I guess usually with DC they have it run through like the family of books before it goes into something. So like with what was that villain? I can't think of what it was called when the villains from Earth 3 came.
Forever Evil?
Was it? Yeah, Forever Evil.
Mm-hmm.
So you had that kind of running through with Superman and Justice League, and I think there were some hints of it in Batman, and there was some stuff in Flash, and then all these little bits came together into the series, as opposed to this, which really feels like it's the Superman. You have to buy an extra Superman book over the summer.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, not the strongest.
All right.
And I'm guessing this is going to, from what I'm seeing, this is going into that You're the Villain thing that they're ramping up to.
Well, yeah, I think it's probably going to be part and parcel with it, no?
Well, I'm not sure exactly how they all tie together, because Event Leviathan is going to be its own 4-issue or 6-issue. I'm trying to remember.
It might be the last one. Well, according to what I'm reading, this is the last single issue. Then there's a Leviathan special, and then if this is in order, Year of the Villain #1 comes out next. I think that's right.
I'm trying to think. We actually got an Event Leviathan #1. We got a retailer preview, one of those heavily watermarked previews. So I have that sitting here. I haven't looked through it yet because I knew I needed to read other stuff before I got into it. But it's, I don't know, and it's weird because Leviathan is the group that Talia al Ghul has been head of.
Right.
And so there has been like this war going on in Leviathan in the Silencer series, but there's this character that Event Leviathan is kind of surrounding, and he's some guy wearing almost looks like a Star Wars Extended Universe Sith face mask thing. And he's apparently this main villain that's the part of the storyline, but I'm not sure how he ties into this because I don't remember him being a part of the story in Silencer where we saw all the Leviathan stuff going, and he hasn't been part of the story. He appears, I think, in the last like 2 pages of this issue of Action Comics, so I don't really know where this guy's coming from. You know, it's just another, again, I guess that's part of that Bendis style where it's just like, well, here's a guy, so now we've got to tell his story so that you can figure out who this guy is, as opposed to like, here's somebody, let's tell you his motivations, let's build them up, and then have a confrontation, you know. So anyway.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Or not, I don't know.
Okay. Next up.
Let's see.
Well, like I said, all I've got is War of the Realm stuff. So if you want to throw out something before we get to that, that's okay.
Most of this stuff is pretty much. Well, let's see. I'll do this one. Sticking on the DC train, actually. Dial H for Hero number 3. I don't know. This is and I don't know that much. I've said this before about the Dial H thing. I know that it is a thing and it has a past in the DC history, but like I said, I never read it, so I don't know. And from what I've heard, this is like this kind of calls into some of that stuff, but doesn't necessarily use it. I don't know, or maybe it is based on something that happened in this issue. But so you got this kid named Miguel and his runaway partner Summer, and they got the H dial or had the H dial, and they're going to get it back because somebody took it from them. And if you know anything about the H dial, it's like you pick it up, you call, you turn into a superhero that's nobody you've ever seen or heard of before, and as the thing says, maybe never even again. So whoever has the H dial can do that kind of stuff. And in this issue, somebody got it and got a hold to it and started causing havoc, I guess, or something. And then one of the other main characters ended up getting it. And of course, we saw, aw.
This is Curly, everybody. Curly just decided to jump on my lap for no reason right in the middle of this conversation.
Who's a good dog?
Yeah. So this is a good reason to check out the video version of this podcast.
Who's a good dog?
He's a cute doggy. Aw.
Except he doesn't like to lick my beard and mustache, so he generally goes for my nose or my mouth, which means I get doggy tongue up my nostril. Or going for my lips, and I'm not a big fan of either one of those.
Kinky. But anyway, there's just enough Dial H though. So yeah, there's a little back and forth thing. Of course, you get a little bit of backup story for one of the main characters, and we even get a little background plot of, I don't know if he's the bad guy or some other person that's coming into the fold that's trying to either they're trying to find the H dial and to defeat the person that's looking for it, who has this group. It's like I said, it's a weird book, and partially because Sam Humphries is writing and he tends to write some fun weird stuff. But it's been amusing so far. I'll say that. And now we'll go ahead and bring up this other one, even though this is basically fodder for rapid fire since we're on DC. Martian Manhunter number 5. Guess what? That book is still out. Still going.
Okay. In
case you forgot.
Yeah, honestly, I would have expected it to be canceled and forgotten by now.
No, I think they're gonna go to length on it because it's already many, but
yeah, I mean it'll at least go to 6 to do a trade.
Actually, no,
but it's a 12-issue series.
That's what I'm saying. They're going to go to length on this because then
it doesn't always go that long, but I don't know. We'll see. I know it's not selling real well, so
it's a weird one in itself. And having I read the last issue, matter of fact, because I have been keeping up with it, but I totally didn't remember anything that happened up until now because it's been a month. So, but luckily, some of that stuff kind of gets brought up in this issue, and there's some back and forth with Jon and his partner, where he just told that he was an alien, or just found out he was an alien. Then there's this other, possibly in his mind, past thing that's coming to haunt him from somebody he put away or something. And it's a weird one, but it's starting to get to a point where it was like, hey, this is actually some stuff going on, but it is still a weird read. Like it's going away from the strictly Mara stuff. Like it kind of calls into some of that stuff, but it's not strict. In fact, it's gotten to the point to where it's like, hey, this is the day that I came to Earth. That's where we are now. So we don't know if it's going to go any more of that Mars stuff after this, and just deal with who's messing with them, or it's just going to keep going down whatever road. So that being said, like I said, I totally forgot what was going on before this, but I don't think it really matters that much, because like I said, a little bit of it gets brought up during the course of this issue, and everything else is still like, okay. But that's my Hunter.
All right, so I'm going to bring up a War of the Realms tie-in book, and that's Avengers. I'm going to start with Avengers 19, because there are still elements in this book of the ongoing story that's going on in Avengers, while the bulk of the story is part of a crossover with War of the Realms. So
I like that they kind of took the time to be like, hey, guess what? The stuff that's in our book is still going on, by the way.
Sure. I mean, to be honest, that's really the way most tie-ins should be. Most crossover books at least should be treated, because there are still elements of the story that are going on, even if it is in the deep background, while the War of the Realms is certainly in the foreground in this. The story is actually told mostly from the point of view of one Ken Hale, aka Gorilla Man, which is a surprising choice.
Well, it would be surprising if you've been reading and thinking or get the notions that, hey, sometimes when they get certain people narrating, that there's something going to happen with that person, which kind of does not what you think it is.
Right. What I was going to say is they've established over the course of this Avengers run that T'Challa, in his role as chairman, has also created a support staff for the Avengers, and at least in terms of operatives, they're basically the agents of Wakanda. And there's a number of those characters who have played various roles over the course of this run of Avengers. And Ken Hale, Gorilla Man, is actually supposed to be head of security for Avengers Mountain. And we get to see him, as T'Challa actually says in the issue, earn that title.
Right. Which I guess he kind of does, given what happens. Which basically takes place in between 2 and 3, I guess, of War of the
yeah, this is all basically happening over the course of the first 3 issues of War of the Realms, because not much
pretty much the end of I think 1 or 2, whenever Doctor Strange hit that spell, and
that's my point exactly, because we're going across the first 3 issues, going into the 4th issue actually, because this issue actually contains little snippets of what's happening in the one-shots, the Strike Force one-shots, as well as some of the at least teasing some of the crossover, the crossover miniseries, and as I mentioned, Ken Hale gets to at least try to earn his title as head of security, because the forces of Malekith are descending upon Avengers Mountain, and it's all about to go down.
Yeah, in fact, that part where he's going to do something and they start invading, that part was definitely in one of the other books. It might have been in the main book, but not from that perspective.
Right.
So, But yeah, and then it goes back, it kind of does all that stuff, and he has this hero moment and going through all of that, and then it goes back to the stuff that the main book, the main Avengers book rather, has been getting back to, or at least alludes to it anyway. Which I don't know. At first, I thought that first part was kind of jarring, but it was like, okay, because you find out a couple of things that's been going on. That we found out, there are things that might not be what it seems, and even at the end of the book is something similar, possibly, unless it's being a swerve. We don't know, but the stuff that had to do with what's going on in the Avengers was like, okay, let's hit this, hit that.
Yeah, it was a pretty good surprise. It's definitely a cliffhanger. This book also ends on a cliffhanger page that is tied into, as you mentioned, the ongoing story in Avengers, and I think the teaser for the next issue, number 20, shows that the War of the Realms story is going to continue into the next issue.
Right, which was kind of sort of already known, but yeah, it's. But that being said, that's that. Because I think, with the exception of a couple of books, I think most of the other tie-in books like this are only doing 2 issues apiece. Although, I think Squirrel Girl's already done 3.
Okay.
Maybe. I don't know. I haven't read any of them, but it doesn't. Either way, so we can go to the next War of the Realm tie-in. Well, actually, you know what? Let me do this real quick. Asgardians of the Galaxy number 9. Oops. That was not what I wanted to do. Which, again, another tie-in issue. And this basically goes as a tie-in issue coming off of issue 2 of War of the Realms, I believe. Because that's when Valkyrie had her thing, right? It's either 2 or 3, I can't remember. No, it was 2, because 3, everything else was going on. So anyway, spoiler alert, and I don't know, Dirt, I don't know if you care to be spoiled about this, because I know
War of the Realm stuff. No.
Yeah.
Nah.
Okay. Valkyrie died. So, and Valkyrie, just like Captain Marvel years earlier, also had a human host. So when she died, presumably that host also was going with her, but during the course of this Asgardians of the Galaxy issue, that gets resolved some kind of way. And that's all I'm saying, because I think Agent 7 said he was going to read that, so I will leave that up to that. But it's plausible. I'm still was thinking, like, I was thinking they would have done a little bit more with that, but I know what they're doing with Jane Foster, so I guess either way, that is that. So we want to go into the real War of the Realms stuff now.
Wait, are you saying that Jane Foster is back?
She's never left.
I thought she was dying of cancer.
It's in remission.
Yeah, they got taken care of, and now she's about to have a new status. Actually, she has one now, but she's about to get a newer status in a month or 2. Well, actually, what? In 2 months.
All right.
She's about to have her own book.
Huh.
Yes, which ties into basically the person we just talked about. So anyway,
that shows you how little I've been reading in that corner of the Marvel universe.
What I was gonna say is you haven't seen these in the solicits or on the order forms, or
I don't. I don't do most of that stuff anymore because I stepped back from the store. So
gotcha.
I only work at the store as fill-in when he's going on vacation or there's a big event and he needs extra hands there. So
sure.
Yeah. So yeah, there's some doings afoot on that part, and on that part. Yeah, and if it wasn't for Agent 70, I wouldn't know some of that stuff that was going on in the Thor part either. So it is what it is.
Wait, but Beta Ray Bill is still alive, right?
He's still around. He's still with.
All right.
He's still around. He's with Guardians of the Galaxy.
Okay, that's all I need to know. I'm good.
Yeah, he's not going anywhere.
All right.
Or at least we hope.
Don't jinx it. But anyway,
I just thought about that. You know what? They would get rid of Bill for some stupid reason.
Philip, my son Philip, actually gets Guardians of the Galaxy, and I always take his digital code and throw it into my library. So I actually have this current run. I just haven't read any of them. But
okay, it's been all right. It's been all right so far.
Yeah, I mean, No, what Roddykat was going to probably mention is that, with this whole the Thanos-centric story, it's actually been pretty entertaining. So
Right. So
All right.
yeah.
Okay.
what do you got? What do you got, Dirt?
Oh, okay. Well,
Well, yeah, enough of you, Roddy.
yeah.
No, only because he only has 4 books, and
Actually, I only have 2 books left.
2 books left. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, actually, Roddy, did you read the Q conflict number 4?
No, because I think I'm an issue behind.
Okay. So basically, for those not in the know, all the great celestial beings, Trelane and Q, and all these great universe warping master race people, whatever you want to call them, of the Star Trek universe, have brought together the Defiant from Deep Space Nine, Voyager, the original Enterprise, and the Next Generation Enterprise, and took the crews and split them up and mixed them together, and each one represents a different team, and they're working for these different beings in some contest that Q has put together.
Yeah, they basically made the contest of champions with the Star Trek universe.
Right, basically. So you get these weird things where it's Spock and Worf are having a conversation, and Kirk and Dax have a conversation. You get this kind of weird stuff going on. But what happens in this particular issue is that Q decides that it's not exciting enough. There hasn't been enough amazing stuff. So he wants to mess with the prophets in the wormhole at Deep Space Nine. So he decides he wants all of these crews to do something that'll make the prophets stick their head out of the wormhole and show themselves to the rest of the universe. Which is not a good idea, according to everybody who's ever done anything with the prophets. And yet,
if you're the Q, because I'm pretty sure they were the people who could probably get rid of them.
Yeah, well, let's just say this ends on a cliffhanger, and the universe is not safe, apparently. So it's a bad idea, apparently, to pick at the hornet's nest.
That reminds me of something I'm glad you're here, because before you go, we got to talk about. Speaking of DS9 stuff.
Oh, the documentary?
Yes, but we're talking about that before you leave. So
okay, but then I do have one other book that I read, and that is Road of Bones, #1. This is from IDW, and this is set in a Russian prison camp, 1950 thereabouts. So Stalin is in power, and basically, you say something wrong about him and someone overhears it, you get thrown into a prison camp. You're a mobster, you're a gangster, you get thrown into the prison camp. You steal something, you get thrown into the prison camp. So you have all these different people from all these different ranges of good or bad, or, how offensive their actions actually were. They get thrown into these camps, and they get worked to death. They get starved, they get beaten. Basically you're just there to do hard labor until you die. They'll tell you got 20 years, but then they'll add on 10 years here and 5 years here. And just, you're basically going to be there until you're gone. But one of the guys inside this prison camp who he's one of these people said the wrong thing and someone overheard it. And so he got thrown in there. He still believes in like the Russian version of like a gnome or a troll or, some kind of goblin, some kind of weird being. And they speak about it and they use the Russian terms and they just kind of speak as if everybody understands what this thing is. And I have no idea what it is. But it's, like I said, some sort of goblin or troll or gnome or something. But he still believes in it, and he is taking food and leaving it on the edge of the camp for this thing to watch over. Where he's at. And of course the guards think he's stealing food, so he gets beaten worse. And he ends up falling in with a bunch of the other more hardened criminals, and he finds an opportunity to escape. And so when he makes his escape, he and 2 other guys find themselves in the mountains in Siberia trying to get anywhere safe, and they realize they don't have enough food. They're not properly prepared for this, and they're looking at a really bad situation. And so, not to give everything away, but as it turns out, monsters are real. The people that you're with, that you can put your life in their hands, they may end up doing the wrong thing with it. But when you're in the most desperate situation, you do the most desperate thing to try to get free. So this is the first issue of a mini series. I think it's 4 issues, they said. But the story is the guy who wrote it. Apparently, his grandfather was Russian, and so he knew about a lot of the stuff that was going on. I don't know that he was actually in a prison camp. Maybe he was, but he knows a lot of what was going on at the time. So it's written with a lot of the knowledge of what life was like in these places and what was really going on. But the artwork it's this really sketchy. The colors are almost like paint splatter. It looks really good. Being IDW, it's on that really slick, glossy paper. So it has this really good effect to it overall, where things are really dark and there's like little pops of color, so you can kind of see what's going on. But it's really a dark, claustrophobic book. It looks dirty. It looks grimy all the time. So the art style really fits the story that's going on. So I just really enjoy it, from top to bottom. It's a great story. It's really good artwork. I like stuff that has kind of that historical bent to it. To me, it just makes it a little more interesting than just your standard kind of comic stuff. So altogether, this is probably the best book I've read this week. Maybe even one of the best books I've read this month.
Nice.
By any chance, was there a mention of the Baba Yaga?
Sure.
No, I don't think that came up, but they might have talked about a babushka at one point.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, God. Anyway. Oh, my gosh.
All right. So,
what do you got, Roddy, before we go into rapid fire?
Well, we'll finish up the World of Realm stuff, which is pretty much rapid fire anyway. So wait, do we have anyone? You read Journey into Mystery, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Journey into World of Realms, Journey into Mystery number 3. So here we have a nice little other misadventure with the team. They end up going off roads and finding themselves somehow into an Old West town. I thought they time traveled for a second, but it's like they went back to 1472, but that was not the case. End up meeting some familiar Western ghosts that they end up fighting. And yeah, it's a weird, fun book for this way. There was a little misunderstanding, but I think that gets settled in.
Right, and there's a twist at the end. So, just as a quick recap, these are the babysitters, right? These are Odin's the most recent, the youngest, Odin's daughter, Lausa, and this kind of ragtag group of heroes has been tasked with being babysitters,
right,
and guarding her.
Yes, and apparently the daughter has more in common in Loki than she does possibly with her parents.
Right. There's a lot probably to unpack in the next issue. We are 3 issues in. But yeah, it was fun to see, the ghosts of Marvel's Western past kind of make an appearance in this issue and kind of lead us into the next chapter of the story. When it comes to revealing what it is, what Lausa really is.
Yeah, and Wonder Man's taste in westerns are weird and not great. You would think that whole conversation would have gone the other way around.
Well, I think that's part of that was part of subverting our expectation.
Right. Yeah, basically. Which was fun, but yeah, it was weird. So yeah, that's that. And the last one I have, which we both read, now to think about it, World of Realms, Strike Force, The Land of the Giants, number 1. This is the one we were talking about earlier. Both before the show and when
Dirt came on, right?
Yeah. So this is basically a mini within a mini, you might want to say, because they did have a Strike Force book prior to this that actually went through the mission that Cap's team went on, and obviously, and this is also coming from the main World of Realms book, which I believe came off of issue 2. I want to say this does say like, hey, read issue 3 or 2 or 3 before reading this one, something like that. I know one of them this week did stay set up, but I think it was this one because it was time. Regardless,
no, this says read War of the Realms 1 through 3. This is actually the only one, right? This is of the Strike Force issues that have come out. This is the one that has dealt with this mission specifically. Because the other ones were dealt with Freya's team and with Captain Marvel's team. So this is Cap's team.
But that was another book that dealt, unless that was in the main book, and that
was the main book. Yeah, you're blurring it a little bit because they do deal with the beginning and the end of this mission in the main book.
But I felt like they went through this mission, skipping a couple of things, obviously that they did in this book, but like up until past when they found Thor. Like this kind of goes into the stuff between Cap's mission with his team was basically the Marvel Knights was to go to Jotunheim and get Thor because he was trapped there.
Right.
So they do that, and then that was shown in another book.
That was shown in the main series, right? Because they needed to bring Thor back into the main series in issue number 4.
That's the case.
Yeah.
Okay. So this kind of fills in some stuff that I don't think it really needed to be filled in, but it was still a good read. So that's why I'm okay with it. So this kind of fills in some stuff that you see in that other issue that did just kind of flesh out a little bit more.
Oh, it's a lot of fun, and I think what I liked about this is that there's a lot of great character interaction that gets glossed over if all you're reading is the miniseries, the main miniseries, where there really is not a lot of character interaction and very little in the way of deep storytelling. A lot of it is just making sure the pieces are moving from A to B as as the game board kind of moves along as the war gets fought. So this issue really did a great job of filling in this particular space, and I disagree in that I thought that this really did a lot to fill in this particular story. Whether or not it needed to be, the main purpose of this of their mission is to bring Thor back. So they needed to have Thor back in time for War of the Realms number 4.
Yeah, which they did in that other issue.
Right. But my point is like we actually get to see this mission actually take place. We don't actually see, all we see in before was, I think, the them getting sniped at and then finding Thor. But in the interim, there's a lot of little character bits in this that were really well worth the read. And some of it was, laugh out loud worthy, which was really a welcome sight. It was a welcome read.
Yeah, I mean, we do in the other book, we do see a little bit more than that because even it goes past where the Thor's Thunder, Berserker Rage and kind of them heading back home, essentially.
Right, exactly. That's it. They just sort of drag him back home. So,
so this is kind of in between all of that. Like I said, I don't know. I wouldn't say necessary. It is a fun read and all that, but I'm more curious as to how they're going to I'm pretty sure they already have it mapped out as to how they're going to do this in trade. I mean, some of it's pretty self-explanatory, but the way they kind of jump around and the books are not coming out. Obviously, when they get to the trade, everything will be out by the time, so they'll have everything in the order that they would want it to be. But as we're getting them now, some stuff is like, hey, this has already happened. Matter of fact, we were having an issue before where some stuff happened in one of the books that already came out that hadn't happened yet in either the main book or whatever the case may be. And now we're going back to the opposite situation where, hey, this stuff's already happened, but we're just kind of filling in some stuff, going into it or whatever the case may be. Anyway, so that's that. It's a pretty interesting. I think you were saying something about the last note on this was you were saying something about there was a movie-ish quality to the humor.
Oh, and I think just as a quick note, this issue, as well as a number of issues that came out this week that were War of the Realms related, read very much like they were taken out of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where even in the midst of all-out war, there's still moments of levity, and some of them are really written in at some of the weirdest, but still very they're written in at the funniest times or the weirdest times, but they're welcome welcome breaks in the story. You know, there's a bit in here about one of the Valkyries, Pegasus type horses, and you know, it's a running gag throughout the book, and it's done pretty well.
Yeah, damn shame what they did to that horse. But anyway, so just to let y'all know, there are 8 there are 8 War of the Realms tie-ins this week. So that just shows you how big this is. The ones, you know, and we're not even getting to it because there's a couple of we hadn't read, and some of them we weren't reading it at all. But you know, they're just like side stuff anyway. Next up, I guess we can go into rapid fire.
Spinning it up.
All right. I'll do mine because I think I got the longer list than most of y'all, and I can do this fairly quick.
Go ahead.
Doctor Strange number 14. So you would think, being a Herald of Galactus, you wouldn't have to stop and ask for directions. Yes, and yet he did. So he's not a true Herald. I'm gonna just go ahead and put that off the bat. But if you don't know the story, he's trying to. Galactus got trapped in the magic realm. They're trying to get him out of there, or trying to get him some sustenance. And it didn't seem to be going well because they're meeting with resistance all of the way until they get somewhere and find out, lo and behold, it's a trap by one of Doctor Strange's enemies, as we see at the end of this. So that was pretty cool. And of course, Doc still has feelings for Clea, no big surprise. Let's see, where did it? Miles Shuri number 8. So she's still dealing with this big space grasshopper. It's back again, and apparently Bruno Mars type person is a figure in Wakanda. If you read the issue, you'll understand what I'm talking about. But they end up doing battle with the big space crooked again, and at the same time, Shuri has taken over the mantle of Black Panther again because T'Challa's still out in space. And she's also trying to figure out why the powers that she's already had have been failing her. And she's started going to find that out. But at the end of this issue, someone she's trusted seems like they've betrayed her. We'll find out more about that next issue. X-Force number 8. It's a lot of fighting in this issue, which apparently Ed Brisson likes his actions, because I think I have not read of an issue of this yet that hasn't had like at least one, has been pretty much one big long fight with some stuff going in the midst of it. But in this case, the team made it to the future. They're trying to find young Cable, and they come across some of his people, and then they get attacked, and they run across somebody who apparently they should know, who should know them, but they don't because they came too early. But it's basically one or two big fights, and Cable's over in the corner, rotting from the technovirus that's eating them up. So we'll see how that goes. Oh, and Rachel's there, but she looks like she's about to have a factor next issue. Clue, Candlestick, number 1. Now I know of the panel, both PC_Dirt and I enjoyed the movie. It's safe to say.
Yes, indeed.
This is not that. However, and this definitely does not have anything to do with, I mean, granted, it is still Clue, so there is a lot of that in it. In fact, it takes more inspiration from the board game, going so far that if you pick up a physical copy, they have like cutouts of new cards in the back that you can use with the board. Something that like it goes that far, but this pretty much sticks to with, like, it's got a real interesting art style, but it basically plays close to, it's like, so you know, they made a Battleship movie a while back, so they basically tried to make a movie out of a board game, as opposed to the way they did Clue in the first place. They're basically doing something like that, but in comic book form.
Well, yeah, because I thought I'd get around to reading this at some point, but the original series was basically just a murder mystery,
right? And this is also, but that was
trappings on top. Yeah,
right. But that was a more modern interpretation. This one's kind of sort of goes back to, I guess, more of the classic board game in a sense. You'll see what I'm talking about when you read it.
Okay.
But it kind of sticks closer to that than the what it did with the modern stuff. I'll put it that way. I hesitant to say if you are a fan of, obviously if you're a fan of the movie, this is not going to do you any good. However, if you are that much of a fan that you are interested in the Clue comic book, maybe read the other one. Thumb through this one if you see it in the book, although I know they're framing it at the stores, but see if it might be something you might want to check out. It's interesting, but not interesting. I don't know. I can't say whether it's going to be interesting enough to kind of sit through. With exception, unless you like the board game and you want to get some of the stuff that they were putting in the back of the book.
Yeah, the one thing that really disappointed me in the first one is that they started out, the first series started out as if they were going to play to the same sensibilities of the movie,
right.
Where they had the first issue had 3 different endings. You know, the narrator was talking to the person reading the comic, so it just had that kind of loose, funny sensibility. But by the end of it, they kind of dropped all that, and it just turned into a straight murder mystery.
Yeah, and the narrator ended up being unreliable, and all kind of stuff happened with that one. It still was all right, but yeah, they kind of lost the thread on that one. This one kind of sticks so far, and this one kind of sticks. Like basically, it's like, hey, what if we put an actual story to the board game, which they kind of, I guess, in a way, they kind of did with the board game, but nevertheless, they're kind of sticking with that with this.
Got it.
I don't know. Like I said, it's something I would be curious to see what you think about it when you read it.
All right.
Let's see. I believe that might be my last. Actually, that is my last book.
Alrighty. Let me wrap up my last few books. War of the Realms, New Agents of Atlas #2. Again, I think this book is fun, but it suffers from new character overload. It's so overwhelming. There's so many characters that the vast majority of Marvel Comics readers are going to be confused as to who is from where and doing what. Thankfully, Greg Pak sprinkles in a few familiar characters so that we at least have some frame of reference for the story. Just as a brief overview, this is the group of heroes tasked with combating the forces of Malekith that have spread across Asia and the Pacific. So that's the focus of the story. And once you figure out that geographical area is so big and these various heroes are from such different and disparate places and far away places, distant from each other, distant from each country is so distant from the other, that the story actually, the way the story plays out, makes a ton of sense in that they have to regroup. They have to not all fight on separate fronts, and they have to organize themselves under the brand of Atlas. And that's really the crux of this story. And I believe there's still one, if not two more issues in this miniseries. So we'll see how this plays out. This is a pretty interesting read, simply because we're still trying to get to know a lot of these characters and their personalities. I know that some of these characters are getting spin-off solo series coming out of this event. So we'll learn more about their personalities there, but it's been an interesting ride because, like I said, it's a little bit of new character overload for me. War of the Realms Uncanny X-Men #2, it fits in chronologically in a weird space because one of the characters in here is dead in the regular Uncanny X-Men book, and that really does jar the senses and makes it a bit strange to read. There's some interesting twists with that character that refer back to some Asgardian crossover stories from way back involving the New Mutants. So that's a big clue as to what this could be referring to. So, if it wasn't for this story and the way it turned, you would think that this would just be kind of a standalone, but you have to know that now this happens before the events of Uncanny X-Men #17. And Also, apparently, we do still have one more Valkyrie left, and that's Danny Moonstar. So
Right. Well, we're gonna get on that one. So
right. So at this point, she's the last one standing.
right. And I was about to say, is this before that? Well, I guess it doesn't really matter because this is before Champions, also, right? Or around that. Because you remember, Cyclops kind of went to Champions and then kind of came back. I guess it probably doesn't even matter because he came back.
It's after, because I think the group that is hiding out at City Field has grown,
right?
And some time has passed based on the art in this book. And also there's a funny Mets reference in this, what they've renamed City Field in the wake of War of the Realms. So it's pretty amusing as a Mets fan.
Okay, cool.
That's it for me.
All right, Dirt.
No, I'm done.
Oh, okay. Well then, clicks of the week.
Clicks of the week. All right.
I barely heard that.
Hang on. There we go.
That was loud.
Yeah, I know.
Okay. Well, mine's going to be Road of Bones. So Road of Bones #1 from IDW.
Yep. Yeah.
Let's see.
I feel like it's a toss-up between two definite ones, but
I'm going to go with my original idea, which was War of the Realms, Strike Force, The Land of Giants. #1. That one shot. I had a lot of fun reading it. It was a good one and done story.
I think I'm going to go with Miles Morales #6. Miles Morales Spider-Man #6.
Did Tim have one?
No, I didn't see him say anything about it. He might have been asleep.
Slacker.
Yeah, but so that is it. Cool. Before we get to the ad and before we let Dirk go, both Dirk and I separately back a week or so ago went to see the documentary What We Left Behind, which was about the Star Trek Deep Space Nine, made by the former showrunners and such. I believe it was Kickstarted.
Yeah, it was Kickstarter or Indiegogo. I forget which.
Yes.
Or both, maybe.
Might have been both, yeah.
There were a lot of names. It went on forever.
Yeah, which the bit they did on that was pretty funny too. It was like because they had like Arabella and Kira, it was like it was like, oh yeah, then they were talking about the names and whatnot. Anyway, that's the documentary itself will be on DVD, will be on Blu-ray DVD in April. Not April, August. In fact, yeah. August 6th is when it's coming out. But want to just get some quick impressions from Dirt and a little bit from myself about it.
Overall, I liked it. It was interesting. It was fun to see some of the people out of makeup because they wore so much prosthetics. You could tell that they never really sat down with Avery Brooks. The interview they used, I think, was from something else, or
Captains, I think.
Yeah. So they didn't really get a chance to talk with him. And some of the interviews that they did were like in a group setting, where they had some were from panels from comic conventions, or some looked like they went back to the hotel room afterwards and they had 6 of them sitting on a couch in a chair or whatever, and they talked for probably 2 hours, and they took 5 minutes out of these conversations. And it's funny because he started out, I can't think of the dude's name, but of course blue goatee, whatever his name is.
Ira Stephen Bayer.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
He starts out by saying, it's all based on memories. Sometimes you get it wrong. Sometimes it plays out different in your head than what actually happened. And of course, the documentary is fine until it gets to this point, like the last 20 minutes, where they all of a sudden start debating whether or not the show deserves credit for blazing this frontier or for doing this. Or for,
yeah.
And it was just like, what are you even talking about? Like,
well, so I to a point I get some of that, because some of the stuff that they talked about was basically like, well, some of the safe stuff we see in shows like Game of Thrones, for instance. So there was like, so basically there was like, cause they even brought it up somewhere in the documentary. It was like, yeah, well, we were basically one of the first ones to do this. Like the show was dark, not necessarily that dark as that, but they were the first ones to get serialized stuff, right. And you know, things happened and it was dark, and you know,
they did whole season arcs, which was something we didn't see in a lot of shows, and especially not in a syndicated show.
Exactly, but we see more of that stuff now, so they kind of brought up the fact that, hey, this is stuff that they're doing now that, you know, basically they may as well have said it's like they owe it to the show, which kind of did, which, you know. So yeah, there was a lot of that, but I mean, it's a documentary, stuff like that's gonna happen, you know, like whether you call it a pat on the back or whatever you want to call it. There's always going to be a little bit of, depending on who's making the documentary, there's always going to be some, well, this is a you know, this is the thing we want to bring up, and so it is what it is on that one.
Yeah, but, well, I was going to say, it's really a shame that they didn't talk to Avery Brooks, because one, he is, you know, the star of the show, but second, he's such a really interesting person. Just like they talk about, you know, what is it like to talk to him? And people say, well, he never talks in these whole sentences. He's just like jazz. And then it cuts to the next person. They're like, he speaks in jazz. And it cuts to the next person. He's jazz. Cuts to the next person. Jazz. And then they got a shot of Avery Brooks talking, and he's doing these like 3-word sentences that kind of go together at a right angle but aren't exactly following, you know. And it would have been so much fun to see like a real, you know, in-depth interview with him as part of this. So it's a shame that they didn't get to do that. But
I kind of wonder about that, because it's like, I know he's still around, I think.
Yeah, he's still doing shows. He's still doing
teaching. Yeah,
and whatever. So for whatever reason, it just never worked out. But you know, some of the stuff that they talk about, though, it's back in the 90s when you're watching this stuff. And I guess late 80s, actually, when it started, you were more in a vacuum watching this stuff, because unless you had friends that were really into it and watched it every week that you could talk to, it was really more just like you're watching the show and then it's done and you're like, wow, that was cool. And then maybe a couple months later, there's an article in like a Star Log or something that comes along, but it wasn't really the way we have today where everything's flying back and forth.
Right. And it definitely didn't have like the internet as we do now.
Right. So for me, the thing that really I never really thought about when I watched the show, and I watched Jake and his dad, to me it was a father and son story. Mm-hmm. And the documentary goes on about how, you know, CNN talked about TV shows of the 90s, and homicide life on the streets was different because there are times where there'd only be black actors on screen, and that was something you didn't see on television, and no one else would do that on television. And then they show these shots from Deep Space Nine where it's the black actors, it's his family, it's Jake and his mom, and, you know, and everybody in these scenes. But to me, I guess living in the vacuum of the time, all I ever saw was it's a family. Right. You know, like it's a dad and his son. Like that was what I always took away from it. Mm-hmm. And all that other stuff that you can put on it, but that wasn't the point of it. So you can point to it, but I think it gives it tries to put too much into it, because it's not like that's how it's marketed. It's not like that's how it's sold, because it is.
I mean,
it's a family. It's a family story. It's this father and son and their bond, how they come so close together after the death of the mom to eventually be torn apart by the prophets and the fact that he's the emissary.
Right. But I see the point they were making, because it is a true point, and I'm coming from probably a different
obviously
than you are, because while that was the case, it was not something that you saw on TV, and you might as well say even now you really don't see it that much. Where one black lead actor and the son, being a positive role model for his dad, you don't really see that because a lot of times you see portrayals of dads, much less black dads in shows. It's always something about crime or drugs or something like that, or abuse or something like that. So this was like one of the shows that actually had a positive, Cosby Show aside and whatever, there was had positive,
right.
Role for the black man, his son in the family, like you said, all of that in the show. And they didn't talk about the whole, which I guess that wasn't the whole thing about, because around in the middle of, well, I guess they kind of did. The middle of the show was when CW kind of started happening, and UPN and that whole thing happened, which means like between that and Voyager, time slots kept getting changed, and you would even see it here and won't see it here when you see, because I remember through that and was kind of pissy. But that they touched on it, but they didn't really get into so far. They brought up the Dax stuff, which I thought was interesting, but I'm kind of slightly surprised, although I probably see why they didn't let them two talk, because they brought up Terry Farrell's side of it, and then they talked to the girl who plays Ezra, but they never did really bring it together about. It was like, well, how did not saying that they would have or should have. It was like, well, how did one feel about the other being, whatever happened to the other one? So
yeah, so it's I mean, in some ways it felt kind of shoehorned, and again, like I said, it's when you're watching TV back then, it was really in a vacuum unless you've got a lot of other people around you watching it. So it was kind of weird the way they went into some of that stuff, and really how much of it. Again, he started out the documentary by saying it's revisionist history. It's the way you want to tell the story more than the way the story actually was. So that was kind of weird, but that was really at the end. Like that was the last 20 minutes. It almost felt kind of tacked on. Like they got to a certain point and they're like, well, we let's throw this stuff on the end and wrap it up.
Maybe. Yeah, because and I know there's going to be some more stuff when they're suggesting that there was a lot of stuff that got cut.
I'm sure there's hours and hours of stuff.
Yeah. So,
but the other thing that was interesting was when you stayed afterwards.
Yes, I was going to.
They showed they had the roundtable discussion with the producers on the show, and it never occurred to me the entire time I'm watching this. But you're watching it on a movie screen, and you're watching this, digital high definition projection, and the scenes from the show come on. Mm-hmm. And it didn't occur to me those are widescreen shots. Those are HD shots, and the show was obviously not HD.
Right.
And it wasn't in widescreen. It was, back in your 4x3 televisions. So until they brought it up at the end, it never, crossed my mind. And then, oh yeah, that's right. It wasn't widescreen. So they talked about how they had to go back in the vault and they had to pull the raw film and get the film scanned in. And then once they got it scanned in from CBS, there was no color correction. There was no, wiping of dust particles. They had to clean it all up, and then they had to frame it.
Guys to look at the shots and to kind of line some stuff up and all that kind of good.
And they got the original, I forget what his production coordinator, I think is what his name was.
Our director of photography.
Yeah. And he came in and he looked at the colors and he's like, no, this should be more blue and that should be more green. And, they were able to tweak it so it looked more like the way it should have looked, as opposed to the way the film came out. So I thought that was a lot when the conversation started in that extra thing at the end. I was like, oh, this is so boring.
See, and I was thinking kind of the same way, because I'm like, okay, they're talking too much tech for this to go somewhere about the actual thing. Like I got what they were doing. I was thinking, I was like, are they going to announce DS9 on HD? Yeah,
that's what I was hoping for.
Right.
But they never took that step. It's just that all the work that they had to do to make it HD. And so once they got into it and once they started showing the shots side by side and, swiping between the two different, the TV version and the HD version, then it was like, okay, this is starting to get interesting. But it took a while for that conversation to rev up to it.
Right. It's like, did we just end this thing for just a little tech thing, which I'm into for certain reasons, but I'm like, I'm not everybody was going to be there. And there were a couple of people that ended up leaving, but I was like, okay, I'm going to sit this one out. There was something else about that I was going to say. Well, there was a throwaway line about, well, maybe from this documentary. Maybe, something could happen on the lines of, they were doing HD. It was a kind of a throwaway line. You barely on that, but it was like, I don't know. CBS doesn't seem like they care enough to do it. Although they've done. Did they ever finish TNG? I don't remember. I think they did.
Yeah, I know they did all of the original series. I know they've been working on Next Generation. I don't know if it.
They started, but I don't know if they finished it.
Yeah, I don't know, because it's weird. Because Deep Space Nine it overlapped with Next Generation, and then it overlapped with Voyager, and it felt like it was never really the focus. Like it was always the redheaded stepchild off to the side. Yeah. Which on the one hand was nice because they were able to do those seasonal arcs, as opposed to merely episodic Alien of the Week, Planet of the Week stuff. But at the same time, it almost puts it to the point where, when they started doing the original series, they kind of jumped around on episodes, so they could pick what was kind of interesting and where they could kind of, if they knew if they did it for this shot on this episode, then they could kind of steal it and retweak it to use it in another episode. So they kind of leapt around the way they did them. Whereas with Deep Space Nine, if you're going to do that, you have to start at the beginning and you have to go in order all the way through. To do it. So that's a much bigger undertaking and a much stronger commitment to get through that show compared to, especially because the original series was only 3 seasons. So
right. Well, see, the funny thing about that is, and I've heard that argument levied, but I'm saying, like, I have yet to find a Star Trek show, maybe with the exception of Discovery, but I'm not entirely sure, that had a strong first season. So, like, all of them, like, even going back, like, and hell, going back to TOS, which that shit was already bounced around and got crazy on its own. TNG, it had, because they were setting up stories and just kind of.
Some of those are hard to watch from the first season.
Yes, I do like, especially speaking of DS9, I do like there was a callback to speaking of first season, Move Along Home, that was one of their crazier episodes, in the first season. If you're a DS9 fan, you know what that one is. But I do like the fact that they kind of called it up.
Yeah, and I also like the fact that Jeffrey Combs is in every Star Trek series except the original series, apparently, but he's in everything at one point or another. And then, I remembered in the series that he was a bunch of clones that kept popping up, and they would kill him, and he would come back, and they'd kill him, and he would come back.
I had actually forgotten about that when they showed that scene.
Well, I thought it was funny. I never knew the story behind that, where they killed him, and they were like, "Man, we really liked having him here. Hey, you know what? He's a clone. Let's bring him back. We'll make another one." I didn't know that there was a story behind it. I thought, they were just geniuses that came up with that from the beginning. Who knew that they were just shooting from the hip as they were going along on that? But it was fun to hear some of those stories in the background. And like the guy who played Gul Dukat.
Yes.
It's so weird to see him without the makeup, but his voice, he was definitely older. His voice was a little raspier, but he was you could still tell that he was the same guy. Whereas Andrew Robinson, who plays Garrick, is almost a completely different person out of makeup, almost a completely different character. But Gul Dukat is like the same dude.
Right. I was like, makeup. That is absolutely him. And it started off with a musical number, and who knew Rom could sing?
Oh, yeah. That was, well, and at first I didn't recognize that was Rom.
Oh, how could you not? Because granted, even like if you did like this, you was like, that's totally Rom.
Well, but in my mind though, Rom is a lot younger.
True.
So I just see this guy in his 50s, whatever, singing, and it took me a little bit. First, I was like, that's not Vic. So I don't know who's this lounge singer guy.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised they didn't have Vic for that part, but
Yeah, but still, yeah, it was fun overall. They did some interesting, like having the musical number at the beginning and the end was interesting. That's the type of thing you don't normally see in something like this. It was weird. I couldn't tell. He was having the conversation with the little girl, and they're sitting in a booth. It looked like the lobby of a hotel or something.
Probably
yeah, and she was like 9 or 10 years old, and she's talking like a 20-year-old. And like every time she'd say something, he'd kind of look at the camera, and I couldn't tell, like, was he feeding her these lines and just having her say them in order to make this scene, or is this girl like some sort of Mensa candidate that he ran across?
No, she probably knows. I mean, hey, look, Star Trek, the Trekkers are savvy, so and they're younger and younger nowadays. So she probably, it's probably all her. I thought about, but I did think about that at first too. It was like it doesn't look like she's just looking at a prompter or anything. So I'm like, no, it's probably just all her.
Yeah. It's weird, but yeah, overall, I enjoyed it. Like I said, there were some things that kind of they were just kind of weird and felt tacked on, but for the most part, overall, I enjoyed it. It was fun, especially fun to see it in the movie theater on the big screen.
Yes, yeah. But and I think that was a one-time thing. So the only other time you'll get to watch it now is when it comes out on digital and Blu-ray or DVD in August. So
yeah, it was through Fathom Events. So when you're at the movie theater before the movie starts, you're watching previews and they're showing like the opera and stuff, and you're like, I'm never watching any of this garbage. Why is this on here? But they do some cool stuff like this too.
Yeah. So. But yeah, it was cool. I enjoyed it myself, so I was glad to be able to go, and I probably will end up picking it up when it comes out when it comes out on the thing.
Well, and it is on Amazon Video, Amazon Prime. Yeah.
Oh, it's already there.
Yeah. Well, no. I mean the series, not the documentary. But
right. I was about to say.
So yeah, I've been watching it.
Wait, you talking about Deep Space Nine or the Captains or
Deep Space Nine? Deep Space
Nine. Yeah. And I think it's on Netflix too. So
okay, well, so I've been watching it through Amazon.
I think the Captain might be on Amazon too.
It might be because I watched the Picard one. But I think that's and then I saw the Scott Bakula one was on, and I started to watch it, but I was like, I don't care for this show. So
right.
But those are the only two I've ever run across.
Yeah,
they show them on, was it on Epics?
Probably, that sounds right. Either that or Stars, one of them two.
Yeah, Epics I forget which one it is. Every so often they have like a free weekend or whatever, and they come across and all.
Yeah, I've seen it, but I've actually never fully watched it. But yeah, so it turns out the other guy that was pretty much a part of it is the guy who was behind that.
Oh, right. Yeah, because he said that when they were working on the Captains, and I was like,
right. Hence the reason why they got that footage from that stuff. Yeah.
All right.
So yeah,
well, it's a good show. It's like I said, it's definitely worth watching.
Yeah, I am seriously thinking about doing a rewatch, but we'll see if that ends up happening.
Alrighty.
Anyway, but yep,
that's do it for me, guys. Thanks.
All right, Doug, take it easy.
Take it easy.
All right, ad, sir.
Our first ad read of the night as I decompress from all the Star Trek talk.
Trying not to fall out. I was actually looking at Star Trek, the official convention, Star Trek Vegas, looking at the guest list.
If you were watching the video, you could see his facial expressions. It was amusing to me.
I'm like, oh, with the Star Trek. All right. I mean, listen, I'm not the hardcore Trekker that maybe some other folks are, but I know my way around the Star Trek universe. But it's not something I'm going to dive into head first like that. Our first ad read of the night is for Blue Apron's meal delivery service. Blue Apron, fresh ingredients and incredible recipes delivered weekly to your door. Skip the grocery store and make incredible meals at home with Blue Apron, always shipped free right to your home. And now the listeners of the Comic Book Chronicles can get $30 off your first Blue Apron order. To place your first order and get $30 off, and to help keep our show free for you, go to our network website at cspn.us. That's cspn.us. Then click on the Keep Our Podcasts free link at the top of the page. From there, scroll down to the Blue Apron link and sign up for your first order. Blue Apron through cspn.us. Do it today.
And now we get into the news. It's amazing to me how that one always seems to kick in at the last part. But anyway, we're going to start in with the cinematic news. Okay, I think one of us may need to turn down our headphones. But anyway, starting off with cinematic news. In that Endgame, Sebastian Stan reacts to the Hot Tub Time Machine references. Now, why would he do such a thing? Because he was in Hot Tub Time Machine, a movie I still have not seen.
I've seen it. I think he has like a villain role in it.
Right, and this is kind of sad because apparently he says in this that he basically said like he was in the theater watching the movie and they made the reference and like he looked around just to see if anybody got it. Nobody did.
Oh no.
He was like, but no one cared. I was really only one that cared. I'm like, oh, sad.
It's one of those cable movies that I caught. You know, it's not something I saw in the theater. So it's one of those cable movies, and it was fun. I don't remember too much of it, and I couldn't believe that it got like at least one sequel.
I mean, so did Hangout. I mean, what is it? What's that movie? The
Hangover?
Thank you.
Well, The Hangover was worth one sequel, not two.
That's what I'm saying. So it's a similar situation. And actually, I haven't even seen all of that one, but from what I've seen of it, I'm like, eh. Anywho, so yeah, that is that. Speaking of Avengers Endgame.
All right. Avengers Endgame passes Avatar at the domestic box office. We're coming up and we're catching up.
Yeah, we brought it up last week and it finally happened.
So Endgame has officially passed Avatar at the domestic box office, making it the second highest grossing U.S. domestic release of all time. As of May 19th, Endgame's total North American gross was $770.8 million after 4 weeks in release. Avatar finished with $760.5 and now has dropped to number 3 on the all-time domestic box office. So,
and it doesn't really matter because it's all going to Disney anyway.
So I looked at Box Office Mojo the other day. I think it was earlier this week, just to see where it was because I still haven't seen Endgame for the second time. I might do it over this weekend before Godzilla comes out. So, but in terms of worldwide, I still think Avengers in second, but it's closing fast because it's at 2.624, and I think Avatar's at 2.78. So that's really not much left, but obviously it's going to lose some steam when Godzilla hits. But I think in terms of Memorial Day weekend, if you're going out to see, you know, one of basically 2 or 3 movies that are out in the, you know, this week. Actually, wait, Aladdin comes out this weekend.
Yeah,
so that's going to be another big one too. Although I haven't heard very good reviews about Aladdin, so you know it could be split up amongst the grown-ups who want to go see John Wick, you know, the kids who want to, you know, see Aladdin maybe.
Yeah, well, never underestimate Disney fans proper. However, yeah, I think even still, I can't imagine that one getting all that. I mean, it's probably gonna be. Clearly, it's gonna make some money,
right?
But you know. That being said, AMC Stubbs A-List is now the top movie ticket plan in the US. I just thought I'd put that in there.
Okay.
That's not in the, because you know it's basically a movie pass type thing, but for AMC movies.
Okay.
And that was so surprisingly enough, where movie pass is slightly failing, surprise, AMC's similar thing is actually doing some numbers. And
well,
actually,
yeah, you know what I was going to say is I think it's probably due to. I mean, there's definitely some loyalty to AMC. They've had what was it, the Stubbs program?
That's what that is, yeah.
So,
well, it's part of that. So Stubbs is like the entry thing, and the A-List is the hey, see X amount of movies per.
Right, that's what I was going to say. But it started with the Stubbs thing, and then once. Because that's what I remember, you know, that's what I remember even before whatchamacallit, Movie Pass came out. So, you know, it's not, you know, like for those of us who don't go to the movies that often, none of that is ever really worth it. But, you know, for those of us who frequent the movies a lot, then, you know, I think that's the ticket for you. That's the, you know, no pun intended, that's the ticket for you.
It would be a thing. It would have been a thing. It would still actually be a thing that would get me to go to more movies. Yeah, had a fund and whatnot. And if there was one that didn't serve just a specific theater, like if Movie Pass is still around, but even that, we don't know how if they're going to be around too much longer.
Right.
You might not be around next year. But anyway, that's enough of that. I just thought I'd bring that up because that is a viable thing for those who want to see movies multiple times. Next up,
that's you.
Yep. Marvel's Robert Downey Jr., Ming-Na Wen, and Jon Favreau become Disney legends. So apparently this is like their Hall of Fame thing.
Okay.
I guess. So obviously Downey's being recognized for his being Tony Stark. Ming-Na Wen is the voice of Mulan, which I still call back to the fact that we unintentionally had a reference from that movie, which I still have yet to see. But she also plays Melinda May in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And she was also a Disney princess in Wreck-It Ralph #2, which I still have not seen. And Jon Favreau, who did the Iron Man movies, the Avengers, executive produced a couple of the Avengers movies, actually the rest of the Avengers movies, and was Happy Hogan.
And directed the Jungle Book, the live.
Well, yeah, but
remake.
Sticking to the Marvel front,
right?
Yes.
So, alrighty.
So so basically, Bob Iger said at D23, Disney Legends Awards is the highest honor we can bestow. It's a recognition of talent, a celebration of achievement, and an expression of profound gratitude to the remarkable men and women that made blah, 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 blah. Anyway, it's basically their Hall of Fame type situation, seems like, which I've never heard of it before this time, so that's interesting. Anyway, I'm sure there's a list out there who's been in it, who made the cut. Next up, with some time to go still, Star Wars Episode 9, Rise of Skywalker released 18 character photos as well. I think do you have a story in here about the other photos that came out? I thought they were all in here, and for some strange reason, they're not showing up at all in this thing. I know there was one of a new character that's been making the rounds.
I think it was a magazine article. That's why I asked. I think it was Entertainment Weekly or something like that. Right.
Yeah, but I don't have that one in here.
Right. That's what I was gonna say. But bottom line is we've got some teaser images of some of the characters in Star Wars 9, and as I mentioned earlier, there's other pictures floating around in news articles as promotion for this movie that's still not coming out until the end of the year.
Right.
I thought that helmet looked a lot like the Maker's helmet, Reed Richards from the Ultimate Universe.
I'm glad I wasn't the only one who thought
or it looked like there's a couple of different turbos from the Marvel Universe. I think or Rocket Boot Man. That's not his name, but I think the character's name is Turbo.
Mm-hmm.
He was in ROM Space Knight. There's a couple of different turbo helmets, and I think this looked like one of them, but more like the Maker's helmet from Ultimate Reed Richards. So there's that character. I think that's Kerry Russell's character. So but yeah, that's those are making the rounds, so feel free to check out our show notes and click on the link and look for that story.
Yeah, and there was a picture with Oscar Isaac with Billy D. Williams and the Falcon. They're just kind of chilling. That was kind of amusing. And like I said, the other one with the new character, whoever that is. But next up, speaking of Rise of Skywalker, how long Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker takes place after The Last Jedi? So here's an article finding out, hey, when does this take place in the timeline? Or we should say, how long after Last Jedi does this take place? Because there's always time jumps in these things. And apparently it is some length that I can't see here right off the bat. And you know what? Just moving right along.
Next up, Star Trek Picard's new teaser trailer is full-bodied with rich oak flavors. So apparently the next original series is going to expand upon the world of Star Trek with which follows it goes into the future and follows the retirement of Jean-Luc Picard.
It's going to be him making wine on his family's farm.
Okay.
Actually, probably not, but actually, you know what? It probably will start out that way because I want to say it's probably obviously it takes place after the end of TNG, so have been references to the last show of TNG. So, and I'm pretty sure by the time this comes out, the people will be watching this. I still have yet to watch this trailer though, but I hear it looks all right. So,
okay.
Next, Justice League fans have raised over $10K for a Snyder Cut release. Let it go, folks. Go.
Gosh.
Let it go. There was another.
I was about to say that's Roddykat out here quoting more Disney movies.
You know what? I once again totally didn't do that on purpose.
Anyway, we're moving on to our next story. We'll leave that one alone in the past.
Yeah.
You can actually hear Robert Pattinson say, "I'm Batman," thanks to a Twilight commentary track. I don't even think he has that kind of accent. I'm just poking fun at the fact that he's at least from the British Isle, somewhere from the United Kingdom. So yeah, lots of people are not prepared for Robert Pattinson being cast as Batman and Matt Reeves the Batman. So it's funny that you can see this and hear him say it as part of a Twilight commentary track.
Yes. Used to call me Batman. Now they call me Batman. I don't know. That doesn't work. Anyway, so yeah, that was. I think I alluded to this article last week. I figured I put it in.
This is Roddykat breaking out the whatchamacallit. What was that? They used to call me crazy. Now they can call me Batman. That was from what movie was that? Yes, thank you. I was about to say that's a crazy show. The Principal. That's right.
O'clock. Yeah. Shout out to Easy Reader. The CW and Netflix will not renew streaming partnership, which means that all of which I should go so far as to say, hey, guess what? Season 7 of The Flash, season 7 of Arrow and whatever the last season, probably 6 of The Flash, have been put on Netflix. Probably won't be there for long, but yeah. So their partnership was like, hey, the CW, put up the shows, but when they get to the seasons, they would put them up like X amount of days after the season comes out. I think it's usually around the start of the next season, but it's usually not long after. So people have been kind of using that to catch up and binge and whatnot. But apparently, all bets are off or going to be off.
Okay. Next up,
for that stuff going forward, I know it's got a couple of people bummed out that you can't catch up. They won't be able
it's going to go to the DC Universe app.
We would hope that's the case. But it doesn't. There's been no real talking about that. But you would think that would be the logical step. Anyway, next up.
Pretty Little Liars star Drew Van Acker has apparently signed on to DC Universe's Titans, with reports suggesting he's going to play Garth, also known as Aqualad.
Yeah, the other Garth. Which that confused me for a second. I was like, wait, this Beast Boy's name is Garth, and then this is the other Garth, but I'm not familiar with the Aqualad verse.
No, Beast Boy's name is actually Garfield. So
yeah,
they use it. No, they use they shorten it to Gar.
Or they would call both of them Gar, or at least one at a time. There was one book I was reading, they would call them Gar for short.
Yeah, so it's Gar. Yeah, they usually shorten it to Gar.
Right. So anyway, regardless, apparently there's going to be there will potentially be an Aquaman if this report is true. I still haven't finished that mess. John Wick Chapter 4 gets May 2021 release date.
Yeah, that was a text message I kind of smiled at. I got that text message from the John Wick people, and I was like, okay, so that was a pretty quick confirmation for the next sequel.
I know, right? It was like the movie just came out. Give it a second to breathe before you go ahead and do this. But apparently they already had it in the works. But I guess that might be the trend. Like maybe I don't know if they actually did this or not, but maybe they filmed 2 movies back to back, like they did, like the Marvel movies have done.
Well, I was about to say, if in some of the recent interviews promoting Parabellum, Chapter 3, what Stahelski, the director, said is that he and Keanu apparently have ideas to take the story going forward for a while. So there may be a number of sequels, and as long as the story remains vibrant and Reeves is up to it, they may be churning these out like Rambo movies, but better.
Or Fast and the Furious.
Well, remember Fast and the Furious, they dropped, like the main cast dropped out for number 3, and they didn't all come back until number 4 a number of years afterwards. This is coming out pretty rapid fire, no pun intended.
Well, yes, and there isn't really a main cast outside of Keanu and you can say
the Continental, right? The guys at the Continental, Chiron and Winston,
right? So, I don't know. I've still yet to see 3. I'm looking forward to it when I get around to it. But
you got to see it. It's a lot of fun.
I know. I want to actually see it in the theater because I haven't seen the other 2. Since I haven't seen the other 2 in the theater, I'm like,
hey, catch it. Listen, catch a matinee. You don't necessarily need to see it in IMAX. I didn't see it.
I wasn't gonna do that anyway.
No,
haven't seen a movie in IMAX in I don't know how long. So yeah, good on that, I guess.
I can tell you since when, since Endgame. But anyway, go on. Moving on. Next up,
I think that's you.
All right. Let's see. DC Super Pets. God. Animated film shifts to May 22nd, 2022 to get away from John Wick Chapter 4. No, I'm kidding.
No, that's what this actually says here.
Oh, that's hysterical. This was likely due to the recent dating of Lionsgate's John Wick Chapter 4, which landed on the same May 2021 slot. Ha!
Yeah, that's why I put this here. I'm like, really?
I didn't read because I had to click on the extension of the story first. I just read the headline and made that joke offhand, and there it was.
So you were on point and didn't even know it.
That's hysterical.
Yeah, but hey, that's the thing. Don't you do it. Michelle Rodriguez joins Fast and Furious 9 after studio agrees to bring on a female writer. Okay.
So Letty wants some, some female voices in the writers' room, and that's fine.
And it's great. There's really nothing to say about that, but that because I think that's actually new news because she had said that she wasn't gonna do it, but I don't recall them saying why she was dropping out of it. Outside of I thought it was like a money dispute or something. But this is the first time we may have heard that this could have been part of the issue. Assuming that's what it was. So hey, there you go.
Next up,
contests Atlas Comics film deal. So we talked about that film deal where somebody bought the library of Atlas Comics and planning on doing film stuff to it. Apparently, Dynamite Entertainment is contesting the language used in the announcement. It's not the characters or the book titles that's concerned, but rather the name Atlas Comics. So it's the name itself that there's a contention with, and I assume Dynamite is going to fight it for some reason. That I'm sure they have a vested. Oh, here we go. Dynamite has used Atlas Comics branding to denote limited edition signed comics of some books. So, yeah. That's why they have that's why they're having an issue with this. But
okay.
Yeah. Next.
The first Terminator Dark Fate trailer It's double the Terminator trouble. So apparently, the first trailer for the latest attempt at rebooting the Terminator franchise has come, and apparently, it acts as if the last 3 Terminator films do not exist, and acts as a direct sequel to Terminator and Terminator 2, which is
fine. They did that with Salvation for 3 or one of those movies. I think they basically glossed over it.
Well, this is apparently just out to ignore all that stuff. So what are you gonna do?
Right. But which I think I still have not seen 3 or whatever it was. Because I think Salvation and the other one kind of glosses over 3, which nobody likes to admit actually happened.
Yeah, spoiler alert, I haven't seen a Terminator movie since Terminator 2.
I'm pretty sure I've seen parts of Salvation and whatever that last one was. Probably in a hotel room. Yes,
I just know the names. I'm
probably because I was sitting in a hotel room and there was nothing to do and it was on HBO or something.
Perfectly happy not having seen any of these movies. All right.
Apparently, all of that gets washed out.
What's that?
So apparently, all of that gets washed out thanks to this movie.
Exactly. And last but not least,
the Goon film enters development at Fox. So yeah, another comic book turned movie. Yay.
Mm-hmm.
Which I guess this might have been one of the ones that might have been up in the air due to the merger, but maybe not. But I don't know.
Gotcha.
So that's the thing. Now we move on to before we move on to comic book news. I will bring up really quick that that Hulu Disney Comcast deal. There's an article in explaining all of that in the show notes. You can go check that out in the clickbait section.
Right. And I also wanted to add that I saw that Marvel's August 2019 solicitations dropped, and I was looking through them on my way home today, probably why I wasn't reading my books, which is bad. Just remember, anyone who needs to pre-order stuff from their pull list needs to take a look at this stuff and get word to their comic book store ASAP. So
yes, FOC comes for us all. I don't think that's how that goes. Regardless, I don't think we don't have too much news coming out of but there's probably going to be a couple things coming out of solicits, but they just came out today. So which everything else has already come out. Why is Marvel does it sometimes? Sometimes they're like the last ones out because they want to be or something. I don't know. Regardless.
Alrighty. First up in comic book news, Absolute Carnage spreads to multiple tie-ins this August. As we mentioned earlier, this is part of the solicitation news. So, lots and lots of Absolute Carnage. I don't know if I'll be reading that. Kind of like the Age of X-Men.
Right. Some of the stuff actually came out before the official. Like people were basically piecing together the solicits. So that's what some of the stuff is before that.
Yeah, like, previews.
I don't give a damn. X-Men, the seminal moments videos set the stage for House of X, Powers of X. So apparently there are some videos out there that is on Marvel's YouTube channel that's for I don't know if they're for X-Men fans, I guess, to get you caught up or going through some moments that maybe will show up in Hickman's run, possibly. But you can go check it out. Episode 1 is out there on the YouTubes now.
Speaking of Hickman's run, and thanks to our very own Tim Dog 98 writing for Comic Book Resources, shout out to Tim Dog 98.
Okay, that was terrible.
So shout out to Tim, and all comments about the quality of the sound effects aside, Tim wrote. Tim had a chance to interview Jonathan Hickman, and he peeled back the curtain on his X-Men run in a nice interview that you can read over at cbr.com.
I wonder if this is one, because I feel like he had alluded to this at one time in the back channel. This might have been the one the thing he was talking about. I don't know. Regardless, go check that out. Not just because it's Tim, because it's a good article.
Not because it's Tim.
Well, because it's Tim, but it's also a good article. Which that doesn't sound like it makes sense, but it does. Trust me on that. Next up, Gwenpool aims to unmask Spider-Man in new miniseries. So, off the heels of West Coast Adventures, Gwenpool is back. Why, we don't know, but she's getting a new solo miniseries from writer Leo Williams, Giant Man. Wait, she's doing it the Giant Man thing that came out last week, and David Baldion from Domino. It's called Gwenpool Strikes Back. So again, solicitations thing. So, and I know there are people that like Gwenpool. I've warmed up to her, but Next up, it's going to be August, I guess.
Yeah, it's part of the August, August solicits.
Well, yeah, I didn't see a date there, but I guess so. Anyway, next.
So Spider-Gwen's going to get a new series that we had talked about last week, and Quesada's going to help bless the restart, not reboot, but restart with a variant cover.
Yes. So cool. I think we see it here. There you go. If you're watching the video, Marvel will introduce a new Daredevil in August. I guess that makes sense because I'm not reading, but I know you have. It hasn't been Matt in the suit this whole run, correct?
No, it has been. But what has been happening up until this point is Daredevil kind of coming off, and I'm going to use a sports metaphor here, kind of coming off the injured list prematurely and jumping back into the game and basically hurting himself and the team. He hasn't been 100%, and he's tried to throw himself back into crime fighting, and it just hasn't helped. So he has been convinced, apparently, to take a step back, and we will see a new Daredevil take his place in Hell's Kitchen for a little while. It's not the first time. This is definitely not a brand new concept in the pages of Daredevil. So, a number of characters from Spider-Man to Iron Fist to Black Panther have taken Daredevil's spot in Hell's Kitchen. So, this is not something new, but apparently it's going to be a new character, and we'll see how this goes in the reconstruction of Daredevil once he's been torn down.
Didn't he already have like a sidekick, like a volume or two ago?
Yeah. He did. So I don't know if this is going to be that character or not. That character was Asian, but I haven't seen anything beyond the one teaser image that Roddykat is showing right now on the video show. So we'll see. Gotcha. That was Blind Spot.
Right. I was just going to ask this article says something about a cold north in relation to Dakota.
Possibly, although this character is African American. He's a new NYPD detective who is, kind of transferred from out of state.
Sure.
So nothing has been revealed yet as to whether or not he's a relative of Dakota North, but it's a small world. You never know.
Yeah. I just thought that was curious. Topps announces the launch of Marvel Collect by Topps Digital Trading Cards. Hey, folks, you like trading cards? You like phones? You like I got nothing else with that. But yeah, so basically there's a new Marvel the digital trading card thing. So basically it's called Marvel's Collect, like it says. You can go in there, and I think you can go in there every day and get a free batch of cards, or you get points or get coins or whatever, where you can buy digital packs of cards. You can quote unquote trade them and look at them, and whatever you want to do with trading card games outside of actually touch them, because it's digital. I messed around with this a little bit. It's neat. It's not unlike the Star Wars one they had, or that they still have a while back, and that they have for their baseball stuff. But they do have a digital app for their baseball cards stuff, which I know some of you Spurs fans may or may not care about. But it's out there, Google Play and iTunes if you care enough for it. I was gonna do a little quick thing on it, but nah, don't worry about it. It's an app, you know what it is. Next up,
so Hasbro has announced that they are going to be releasing a retro collection of Star Wars action figures from the first issue way back in what, 78, 79, and 80. So wait, did they put the figures out in 77?
well, the what, you talking about the comic book? The comic book came out
No, the figures, I mean.
the figures came out, I believe, either 77 and 78.
Right, that's what I was guessing. They weren't out immediately, but they were out soon after.
I feel like I should know that because
yeah, so they're being reissued on retro styled cardboard cards. So this should be fun for collectors who always wanted those style of figures and wouldn't pay for reseller prices. Obviously these figures aren't going to be exact replicas because there's always subtle changes, but ultimately it's nice to see these simulacrums or replicas of the original characters, original figures out for purchase.
Right, and I was about to say, this whole retro style of the backing for it has been done as variant covers for Star Wars books, which I think did pretty well because I had remember hearing about somebody kind of coming in the store and getting a bunch of those. Not coming to, but you know what I'm saying. So, I don't know. Part of me thinks it's cool. I think it's cool. Period. But I know part of me is like, I kind of want to get it, but at the same time, like, dang, I wish I had my old figures and intact at that. If I knew what I knew then, if I knew then what I knew now.
No one knew then what they know now.
Well, some people did, but not that many. But you're right.
Right, there were older collectors that maybe liked it and didn't necessarily play with them, or maybe kept them as gifts and never actually gifted them. So.
Mm-hmm. Actually, it was just kind of funny because Journey into Mystery kind of alludes to the figure thing. Yeah. Anyway, but I thought that was kind of fun. That was actually kind of mentioned. Anyway, next up, I believe this is you.
No, I just did the last one, but okay, I'll do this because apparently I'm getting the Tom King story. So. Tom King is apparently exiting Batman this year. This is a report, and this was rumor and speculation coming out over the past week.
Still is.
I'm sorry?
I said for what we kind of know, it probably still is, even though this article seems to suggest that it's been confirmed by some offhand person.
Right. There's been some corroboration. Ultimately, Tom King put out a relatively cryptic tweet about thanking people for the kind notes. But the crux of the story is that DC is taking Tom King off of Batman before he's able to finish his planned 100+ issue run. The book is rapidly heading towards issue number 75, in which Tom King has teased Batman's never going to be the same again. So, my guess, I haven't read any of this stuff. It's been, I'm not a fan of, if you're going to let him write 75+ issues, just give him the extra 25. If the sales aren't right, if the sales aren't that bad, but
it's Batman. He sells regardless.
I'm sorry?
It's Batman. He sells regardless, even though people bitch and complain and send them death threats like idiots.
Well, the death threats weren't about Batman. They were about
I know, but
whatchamacallit, heroes in crisis.
But yeah, but the point is, he was still getting them. I know,
right? No, that I understand. But with regards to his work on Batman, I was just going to add that the last long story arc, the Nightmare story arc, you've heard myself and PCN_Dirt talk about how it's been kind of difficult to read through because this 6, 7, 8 issue arc has been all in Bruce Wayne's head. It might be even as long as 10 issues, and that's a tough slog. And we all understand what the point is. We understand that this is all part of an overarching scheme by Bane to break the Bat, but ultimately it's been a long slog, and I'm wondering if it's just been taking too long in DC editorial's eyes or DC corporate's eyes, and
given into the the rabble.
I beg your pardon?
I said, or they'll give it into the rabble as they have reportedly done.
It might be. So ultimately, the rumor is they're going to take King off of Batman before he makes it to this 100 issue finale, and pull him off with I think at around the 85 issue mark, which is still a lot, and it just means that he's going to apparently compress the denouement, the ultimate reveal of the story after 75 into 10 issues, which
makes it worse because even when stories have been compressed, it doesn't always work out, and there's always something that ends up going on.
That's some Game of Thrones meta reference right there.
Okay.
I was also going to say that I know you don't watch it, but that's what a lot of people have been saying about the most recent most recent seasons.
Right.
That the compressed nature of the seasons led to rushed storytelling. What I was going to say, though, is that King's not leaving DC. I've seen some teasers from Mitch Gerard's on Twitter where he's looking at Kingdom Come reference stuff.
Right, because supposedly to King, he and King still gonna do that follow up. Well, not follow up, but their next.
Their next big project. Right, their next big project is going to be based on or around Kingdom Come. So, that's what Gerard was teasing. So it's not like King is leaving DC, but ultimately, we'll see how this all shakes out. It would suck if, in fact, DC is bending the knee. There's another Game of Thrones reference. Is in fact bending the knee to the rabble rousers online. I really do wonder if this is related to sales, but I haven't, PCN_dirt usually looked at sales numbers for us, but I can always take a look and see what Batman's been doing over the course of this Nightmare story arc and see if this is a numbers issue as well.
Yeah. But regardless, it's kind of sad, and I don't know. Have we got to the point where we can't sit through stories anymore, to where it has to be somewhere and be somewhere quick? Like we used to have long ass runs of story. Heck, we used to go a whole year with just stories.
Right. No, but my point, what I was going to say though, is it's been a tough slog. You haven't been reading this Batman, so
I get that, but I'm just saying. But I mean, I don't know. It just kind of feels like even that outside of that, like, yeah, okay, if it's taking too long or not we're getting nowhere, that's kind of one thing. But like I said, we used to have to where just like, well, just stories were just stories, and yeah, sometimes they went somewhere in little arcs or whatever the case may be or whatever. But things just ran and it kept on going. Like, hey, but now we can't even. There are people who can't even sit through an issue and without, seeing them without giving it a chance.
I think that's always going to be the case with comics. I just think we hear it more. So
that also, yeah. I don't know, but that's the thing. So
I think that's sort of the nature of the beast in that there's a reason why, and I don't agree with it. There's a reason why the whole reboot with #1 thing makes a lot of sense to the sales and marketing people at the comic book companies, because as much as I want to see a title get up to issue number 700 or 800, and it makes filing a lot easier. Don't get me started on filing my comics away.
Right. Especially when they did a recent renumbering, and then
right now there's legacy numbering, which is helpful. But then if you're actually changing the title, then it makes keeping things in alphabetical order a real pain in the neck. But that's something for folks who are on Twitter to see me complaining about this morning on my way in. It's like, man, I hate organizing my comics.
And we do also recognize that's a slight first world problem, but nevertheless, problem.
Right. But anyway, let's get to our last story of the week.
Justice League debuts new logo for its 60th anniversary. So, in celebration of the team's 60th anniversary, Justice League will feature a brand new logo starting with issues 25. Not unlike what they did with Detective recently. I know they changed the
Yeah.
Detective recently, and here it is. So okay, yeah,
it's got a star.
Yeah,
it's definitely reminiscent of some of the older logos. So
that, and I feel like it's the not the something about it in the movie logo, but it's not necessarily, But regardless, it's a thing. So yeah, it is what it is, and that is the end of the news.
Alrighty, so our last ad read of the night is for Funko. Fun at first sight. It's your home for exclusive collectibles, such as their world-famous pop vinyl bobbleheads, apparel, t-shirts, hats, and socks, and brand merchandise, custom DIY pop figures, art books, and skateboards. And now the listeners of the Comic Book Chronicles can enjoy 10% off your entire purchase when shopping at Funko. To place your first order with 10% off and to help keep our show free for you, go to our network website at cspn.us. That's cspn.us. Then click on the Keep Our Podcasts free link at the top of the page. From there, scroll down to the Funko link and place your order. When you get to the checkout, put in the offer code SHOP10 for your 10% off discount. Funko through cspn.us. Do it today. You're on mute.
Yeah. Here we are at the end of the show, folks. We'd like to thank each and every one of you from coming out. Thank you to PC_Dirt for popping in when he did. You can find us here next week, 9-ish p.m. Thursdays when we record. And the audio comes out Friday mornings sometimes.
Right. Although be aware that next week, although I haven't received any word yet, Godzilla is coming out. So I don't think we're going to be on movie protocol, but just be aware.
You doing movie protocol for Godzilla?
It depends, but the thing is, it depends on whether or not people make plans. That's the thing.
Right. Okay, sure. All right. So
it's not something I'm planning on going to see. It's not something that we bought like advance tickets a month or two in advance, like Endgame, But if it's one of those things that pops up at the last second, so
sure, understand. It's nice to have friends.
Oh no!
That voice you are hearing has been Agent_70. You can find him at Agent_70 on Twitter and Instagram. PC_Dirt, as I said, on Twitter, Pop Culture Net on Twitter, popculturenetwork.com, and INeedComics.com, one of the many umbrellas of his network. Tim, DOGG98 on Twitter, The Click Nation, that's DKLIQNATION on Twitter, and theclicknation.com. Also, CB Cron on Twitter, and of course, Comic Book Resources, where he's over there writing his face off. And of course, myself, Roddykat. You can find me at Roddykat on Twitter and Instagram. Also, find me at CB Caps on Instagram, News Nerds Need on Twitter, News Nerds Need Reddit. All that good stuff. And what I think I neglected to say at the beginning of the show is that you can find this podcast on the Cold Slither Podcast Network. That's cspn.us. Go there and go check out other podcasts on the network. But check us out first. You can also subscribe to the podcast on Google Play and Apple iTunes, aka Apple Podcasts. You can also go to Spotify. We're there. And the Cold Slither Podcast Network's SoundCloud page. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we will be back next week unless Godzilla stomps us all out.
Yeah.
We will check you out then. And I'm stalling for time because I don't have this stuff readily at hand because
it's okay.
It's all good.
It's all good.
This has been the Comic Book Chronicles. We'll see you later. Peace.
Peace. One.
Good evening, Red.
Would you believe it's Dr. Doom?
What's on your evil mind?
Hold your insulting tongue and mark my words well.
How about this rumor that you are really hired Mr. Stark?